Well, hello and welcome. This is Nahid, and this is our Accelerated Growth Program, and we are in class number 8. So let's go over the program flowchart so you can get an idea of where you are at. So you started at the beginning of the program keeping a trigger log, and then as you notice the patterns in the trigger log, you were able to use that information to identify an unmet need to work on. And during that process, we gave you lots of exercises and background information to help you understand why identifying an unmet need is important, and getting that need met will make such a big difference in your life. Then we moved on to the empowerment log. The empowerment log is really important because it helps you understand how you can get needs met that before you didn't think you could get met. In other words, it's empowering you to meet needs that you didn't really know that you could get met in the past. We spent a lot of time on that and explaining again the background of the empowerment log and how needs work. And then we took you to step 5, which you should have been doing for maybe since our last video, reflecting on what you've learned on how your thoughts and thinking patterns contribute to how much you get of what you need. So in this video, we're going to take what you've learned from your empowerment log, and we're going to start a new log. This is the last log that you're going to do in the program, and it's called an abundance log. So in your empowerment log, one of the things that's really important is looking at your thoughts and learning how your thoughts were working against you. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail right now, but the things that you should have been writing in your reflection paper should have a lot to do with what you're noticing about your ongoing thinking patterns. And you'll notice in this example, one of the things that I said is, I noticed by doing this empowerment log that I was allowing confidence in when I wasn't boastful about it. But when I got super excited about accomplishing something, I immediately shut myself down. And I realized that by just thinking more deeply about all of the examples that I wrote down. That was an enlightenment for me, and I'll show you how I translated that to my abundance log later. So another thing that we did in one of our prior videos, and several of our prior videos now, is talk about this multi-layer belief model. And this explains how your unmet needs are blocked by your scarcity beliefs, and how your scarcity beliefs determine what your survival beliefs are, which again determine what your survival strategy is. And your survival strategy often is the whole reason for the behaviors that you don't change, that you want to change. So the behaviors like compulsive eating, compulsive overworking, anything that's kind of compulsive and not logical and you know you want to change, maybe not being able to stay on top of your time management, maybe procrastinating, various different things. Those are usually part of your survival strategy, or they're caused by your survival strategy. And so a lot of what people come to coaching for is because they're experiencing a lot of collateral damage from their survival strategy, or because their survival strategy is not working. And typically what they're trying to do is get their survival strategy to work better. Because this other stuff in these inner 3 circles usually aren't conscious. They're kind of subconscious, and it takes some work and some questioning to figure this stuff out. So this is what you were figuring out with your empowerment log, and with noticing your unmet needs and noticing your thinking process and how your thinking process blocks your needs from getting met. If you look at how your thoughts were working against you, and you actually record your thoughts, you'll notice the sentences that you tell yourself over and over again. Those sentences should be a reflection of your survival beliefs. And it should start to make sense what you do. Now, it might not, and if it doesn't, don't feel bad, because this stuff is not easy to figure out on your own, and that's why we have classes that you can take in the program where everybody discusses what they're trying to figure out about themselves, and we kind of have aha moments together just by listening to how other people are figuring things out. Every time I work with somebody else to figure out their puzzle, then I learn more about myself, and vice versa. And also, if you have a mentor that you're working with, your mentor can help you figure out your puzzle just by going through some of your reflections with you and some of your logs and some of your patterns. And if you have coaching time with me, you can spend that time with me figuring that stuff out. But the bottom line is that as you've looked at your empowerment log now and watched yourself getting your needs met a little bit, sometimes blocking yourself from getting your needs met, and started that process of really trying to open yourself up to receiving the thing that you need the most, you've probably had a lot of insights and learning about yourself, and that's what you will have put in this reflection paragraph. So now it's time to take this information and move it to your abundance log. And I'm going to give you an example here of an abundance log. So the abundance log is very different from the other logs. It essentially says, what's the scarcity belief I need to re-examine? What's the abundance belief that I'd like to consider? And then basically the abundance log is just collecting evidence that supports the abundance belief. I'm going to go over mine in a little bit more depth here. So let me go back to my empowerment log. So again, this is just a snapshot of my empowerment log. There were several other examples in it. But essentially what I learned is that I have some issue in my head that says that if I accomplish too much, other people will be jealous of me, and that I should not boast, that I should minimize my accomplishments. And so I started a habit of minimizing my accomplishments, but then I never really got to enjoy my accomplishments. So when I identified this unmet need of feeling confident, I realized that confidence and self-satisfaction was my way of enjoying my accomplishments. And I noticed that when I had higher degrees of that I was allowing in, it was because I was savoring my accomplishment, but in a very humble way. That I would allow myself to savor it, but only as one step on a longer journey. And when I was humble like that, I was able to take the accomplishment in. But if I got too excited about an accomplishment, I would immediately shut myself down with negative thoughts. And if I didn't have an accomplishment, or if I failed at something, I'd often spiral down as well. So I also learned that I should not attach my identity too much to accomplishments and failures. But I can only take one lesson forward into the abundance log. And what I decided to do is take a look at this belief that I can't enjoy or talk about my accomplishments because others will be angry or jealous, and I'll be seen as boastful and be rejected or abandoned. So the scarcity that I felt, the unmet need, was that feeling of confidence and capability that came from enjoying my accomplishments and actually being able to sort of revel in them a little bit. Apparently, when I was a kid and I reveled in my accomplishments, I got shut down really fast, and I continued that pattern. I think what was in my head was, I can't revel because others will be angry and jealous. I will be seen as boastful and be rejected and abandoned. And that makes sense to me as I reflect upon my childhood. It mattered to me that other people stayed with me and were friends with me, and so I automatically assumed that they would be jealous if I succeeded, and so I would undermine my successes. And I remember instances from my childhood with my little sisters and brothers where I would purposely lose games so that they would be happy, so that they would still play nicely with me, and I wouldn't have to deal with them being angry or upset with me. So that's a little bit of a crazy behavior pattern, but it was based on a belief, and it's a belief I developed when I was a child. So what's an abundance belief that I'd like to consider? Well, after thinking about it and learning, I decided that I'd like to consider the belief that others will not abandon me if I accomplish too much, that other people are more concerned with their own life and being heard and acknowledged, that I can accomplish all I want and still be loved and appreciated as long as I treat others with kindness and respect. So that's what I want my abundance belief to be. And then I started collecting evidence. So what I first did is I decided I would notice people who are highly accomplished. Are they surrounded by people who are jealous of them and who abandon them? I noticed that many people who were highly accomplished were surrounded by highly supportive friends and family. So that seemed to be evidence that you can accomplish a lot and still be loved. Then I looked in my recent memory. Has anybody accused me of being boastful? No. And then when I think about it, I put myself in the shoes of someone who maybe has a friend who's highly accomplished. When I think about it, I do sometimes get jealous of other people's accomplishments, but that doesn't make me want to abandon them. My reaction is more about myself and how I want to do better. So even if I look up to someone and I feel a little jealous of them, usually I don't want to reject them. Usually it makes me want to do better, and usually that's all about me and my story. So if I switch the shoes around again, I would imagine that if someone's around me and they actually get jealous or angry of my accomplishment, then that's more about them, and that should inspire them to do better. Then I wrote, I can remember how as a child my siblings would seem angry at me when I accomplished things, and the kids at school seemed angry when I was a star student, but I think I misinterpreted their anger as about me when it was really about themselves. So as you can see, in this example, I'm processing and processing and processing. I'm going out and observing evidence. I'm rethinking this way of thinking. So I realize that this thinking process is based on assumptions that I've had since I was a child, but I see how it's not serving me anymore because it doesn't allow me to revel in my own accomplishments, and it causes me to not want to accomplish anything that will give me too much exposure. So this is really just a process of relearning, and I think that's really important when you think about changing beliefs. Changing beliefs seems very daunting until you think about beliefs as simply learning. It's simply learning new information, and the reason beliefs are beliefs is that we just stop questioning them once they turn from assumptions into beliefs. Once we believe something's true, we have no reason to question it again. So what you're doing in this process that's very empowering is you're questioning a belief that doesn't serve you, and you're just opening your mind to the possibility that it might be different. So I'm not trying to force myself to believe this new thing. I'm just writing it down. It's like an experiment, and I want to think about it. So now I have to go out and get evidence and observe it. Now, what I wrote was fairly complicated, and I realize that it might not be so easy for you to find a belief without some help or some coaching. So here's a template you can use that will be helpful regardless of whether or not you got any great insights from your empowerment log. And that is, simply write for your scarcity belief, there is not enough blank for me in the world because, and you fill in the blank with your unmet need that you identified. So for me, what I could have said is there's not enough confidence / capability for me in the world because, and then I'd have to think about why that is, and probably what I would write is there's not enough confidence capability for me in the world because I don't feel it's right to boast about my accomplishments. So I don't feel that it's right for me to savor my accomplishments. And then the abundance belief is there's plenty of blank in the world for me and for anyone because. So I might write there's plenty of confidence capability in the world for me and for anyone because other people won't abandon me just because I have accomplishments. So that must be it from up here. There's not enough capability accomplishment for me in the world because if I accomplish too much, others will get mad and leave me. And then I can say there's plenty of confidence capability in the world and for anyone because people don't leave other people just because they've accomplished things. And then I begin my log. So this is a nice little guideline you can use to help you identify a scarcity and abundance belief. And using this template also helps you avoid the mistake of working on a belief that's really just in support of your survival strategy and isn't actually your scarcity belief, which is the one that you actually want to be working on. And I don't know if I included a model here. Well, we've already talked about scarcity and abundance and how our scarcity beliefs The reason we have scarcity beliefs, and the reason that our scarcity beliefs, the good news is they're usually not true. And I'm only saying usually. I believe they're never true, but I'm only saying usually because I don't know. There might be something that someone finds scarce in the world that actually is scarce in the world to them, even as an adult. So I think it's important just to keep your mind open. However, most of the time, scarcity beliefs are wrong because what we did is we put conditions. We said, I can only get X, safety, love, acceptance, protection, nourishment, whatever it is, if some condition. But most of these things are not conditional. In other words, people don't love you just because you deserve love. If I love somebody, I love somebody because I'm a loving person or because I've chosen to love them. And I don't expect them to be a certain way. It's not conditional love. It's unconditional love for the most part. So if I'm kind to you, or if I give you something, like if I'm generous to you, usually I do it because I feel like I'm a kind and generous person, not because you deserve kindness or generosity. So I think a lot of times when we're kids, we decide that the reason we get things is because we deserve them or we don't deserve them. And when in fact, the reason we get things is because the people around us gave them to us. And a lot of times they have very different reasons for doing that. Some people may do it because they think we deserve it, but for the most part, people give things because they feel giving. Here are some things you can think about as you're filling up your abundance log. Think about why people choose to give to others. Is it because others deserve what we give, or because we see ourselves as giving people? Put yourself in the other shoes. When you love others, is it because they deserve it, or because you've chosen to commit, or because you see yourself as a loving person? Watch others who seem to have an abundance of what you most need. Why do they have it? Is it because they deserve it? Is it because they're special? So what I did is I looked at people who were accomplished, and I thought, do all these accomplished people in the world have no family around because everybody's jealous of them? No, it doesn't look like it. So what story does your brain make up? Well, my brain made up a story that people will be jealous of me and leave. But what's a more logical possibility? Well, a more logical possibility is that I made a lot more out of what I thought was jealousy because I was scared of people leaving me, and that people often don't leave people who are more accomplished. People stay with other people that make them feel good about themselves, but the accomplishing things has really nothing to do with that. Find exceptions to the rules of your story. So if you have a story, again, that says, people will only like me if I'm beautiful, or people will only like me, etc. If you said people will only like me if I'm beautiful, then what you might want to look for are people who you think are ugly that are really liked and loved. And that those exceptions to the rules of your story will start providing you evidence that says, hey, maybe this isn't so scarce as I thought. Compare people who have an abundance with those who have very little. Try to open your mind to new reasons to explain the disparity. So if we go back to my accomplishment example, if I look at people who are accomplished and people who are not accomplished, and I say, well, what are the differences? And I specifically look at how surrounded they are with friends and family, I might say to myself, look at that. Accomplishment has nothing to do with it. Remember, changing beliefs is just a process of learning, and anyone can learn. So this isn't anything more than reconsidering something that you've already closed the book on. Let's say, once the case is closed, you tend not to question it. But if you decide to reopen the case, then you can investigate more. And what you're doing is you're reopening the case on this belief. The belief is, how do I get love? Or how do I get whatever it is that was scarce in your life? Okay. So here is your abundance log, and as always, we have copies of these that we've either already sent to you, or there are links in an email for you or on the website. And if you need help, you can always reach out to me. If you have a mentor, you can reach out to your mentor. If you're in a class, you can talk to people about your questions on the class. But you should always feel free to reach out if you get stuck. I know this is pretty deep work, but it is important and empowering work, and this is the place where you're going to start noticing your life changing. So have fun with it.